Good. Yeah. So I think commission will definitely talk about the survey. Did you see the questions? And then they'll pass it to us. We'll talk about it. But on our agenda, I mean, we have very little to do. I'm sure Malcolm, have you met Malcolm?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll have a soft handoff to Malcolm for the comp plan under our agenda. And then certainly you can speak of your experience with the COG, which Malcolm also has. And oh, really? Did you talk to Gregory?
I don't know.
Sure. Hello, Rich McKenna. How are you? Nice to finally meet you. I'm good.
Hello, how are you?
You're here with us.
Did y'all get these in your packets? A little, yeah, you did. This right here? If not, I have extra copies that Don made.
Hey, Erica. How are you?
Okay, well, here, I'll leave these with you. It looks like the chairman got one, but everybody should. I know.
What's that? What do you want?
No, did y'all have these?
I just printed mine.
Okay, there you go. So those are for you all in the crowd.
Do you know him at all? Have you met him? He's a great ally for us. Tremendous amount of work for his plan time, but he's always there for us. And Reggie Simmons.
Hey, Rich.
How are you?
I'm doing good. You?
Good to see you.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. I didn't think he was coming tonight.
How are you? I'm good. I was thinking about you. What's your doctor tell you?
Which one that was?
Now, you had a doctor's appointment on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
You enjoyed yourself so much. Yeah, it's a great
What about
time.
your back doctor?
Everybody will tell you that, but it really
He was
is.
pleased with how you're doing, how it looked.
So much.
I'm good.
So much good.
Hey, how are you? Good too. How's everything going? Good deal.
As far as your back goes?
Oh, she's good.
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 Good, Donald.
Well, I just wanted to, I knew you were. had a
Yeah,
couple
yeah, I
things.
just,
Thank you.
something's in my notebook. I'm like, maybe the next guy will change it.
How's everybody?
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Larry.
How you doing, sir? Doing good? Good, good. Hey, babe. How you doing?
Council members ready?
Yeah, he had two that weren't working. So what I said was, after they finish.
Right. We'll call to order the joint planning session, Blythewood Town Council special call meeting and the regular planning commission meeting. We're at the Manor. Today is February 1st. The time is now 6:02 p.m. So we will ask Ms. Cowan to conduct roll call of the town council first. I'm here.
Present.
I am here.
Present.
Here.
Thank you. Then we'll move to the roll call of the planning commission, please.
Present. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
for the record, Ms. Middleton may be joining us on Facebook.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Cowan, was the notification and posting of the meeting agenda accomplished in accordance with state law? Thank you. Members of the town council, you have before you the agenda for this evening. If it please you, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt our agenda.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been probably motion and seconded to approve tonight's agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please join me in a quick prayer. I'm sorry it's not on the agenda. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask your guiding wisdom and love on this body and these citizens who volunteer and spend hours in your service in serving the citizens of Blythewood. Lord, we ask that you be with our first responders and service members, military men and women around the world as they protect our freedom. Lord, we ask that you be with those who are infirmed or sick and could not be with us tonight. We ask all these things in your Son's name, our Heavenly Savior, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, before we begin, I want to introduce Ms. Sharon Pickle. She's not a stranger to us at all, and we have asked her to join the Planning Commission. She said those other commissions just weren't busy enough for her and they didn't do enough, so she wanted to get her hands dirty and get in here and help us in Blythewood. So please join me in a round of applause for Ms. Pickle and her volunteer. Thank you, ma'am. All right, now we'll move to tonight's discussion items. I want to talk briefly about strategic plan and have anybody else that wants to talk about it speak. And then Councilman Sloan Griffin will discuss a little bit about our Charles zoning initiative that he's leading up, and then we will discuss a comprehensive plan survey questionnaire that the Planning Commission has developed to reach out to our citizens and stakeholders and get their opinions and feedback as we enter not only a new budget season for the Town Council, but a new comprehensive planning season for the Planning Commission. So with that, we'll talk about the strategic plan a little bit. Last Saturday, we held a 3-hour session here. I know many people weren't able to attend. That's okay, because we're still in the process of moving forward with solidifying our mission, vision, values, and objectives or goals for the upcoming 2 to 3 year period. I don't want to get 10 years down the road. You seem to get lost from time to time, or you have a tendency to push things off knowing you have another 8, another 5, another 4 years. So when you have 2 or 3 years, you got to get them done now. You got to get them on the calendar, and people take action. So I'll direct your attention to this document. It has at the top, it says pre-decisional document 1 February 2021. And this is just and what I want you all to do is take it back with you. You can't absorb it all right now and give feedback. Take it, talk to your neighbors and friends about it, your HOAs about it, and see if this makes sense. Are we missing something in here? Do you want to add another adjective or another bullet point as we continue to grow this? But we need a clear mission statement for the town of Blythewood, and we need a clear vision, and then we need, obviously, objectives and values that feed that vision, and again, keeping it within a 2 to 3 year cycle. So the first thing I did is when we did the butcher block and people were calling out things that Blythewood meant to them and what our mission should be, I kind of boiled it all down to this statement here. The town of Blythewood promotes, improves, and responds to the needs of its citizens while preserving our attractive, rural, and historic character for the benefit, enjoyment, and accessibility of all. That's kind of just my draft of it, based on what I thought I could be and be as inclusive as I could, using the words that are right on the bottom of this page. Responsible, honor, safety, environmental, so on and so forth. So just trying to pick a overall arching theme as our mission and incorporate as many of these values as possible. That's how we came up with this mission statement. And of course, when you take this back and you're looking at it, the definition of a mission statement, what does your organization do? Well, we don't provide a whole lot of services, so a lot of towns you'll see will talk about services, but we didn't put that in here because we don't do a whole lot of that. The county does a lot of our services. So I try to be realistic in this mission also. Relative quality or value of what you do. So providing quality of life, attractive, rural, historic, those adjectives go into the mission statement. Who do you serve? The citizens of Blythewood, and outside of the town limits of Blythewood, we have stakeholders. We have children who come in to go to school here, right in the center of town. We have many children who participate in sports. We have many adults that come into Blythewood to shop and to recreate here in our town center, so it's open to all. And then, of course, our commitment to diversity and inclusion is what we say at the benefit, enjoyment, and accessibility of all. So we include everyone and all levels of government and activities that we sponsor here in town. So with that, council members, any immediate questions jump out at you or comments? Planning commissioners? Okay, well, and, you know, tweak it, recommend. I'm not tied to any of this. I'm just trying to make it logical. So when we put these in our documents, like our comprehensive plan, master plan, our town website, our visitors bureau guide, whatever we're going to have, all these things will be approved by all and make sense. Okay, so moving on, the next page, we talked a little bit about our vision. And, of course, this is not my own work. I looked at many, many rural vision statements, and I came up with this one, and it's a amalgamation of many small towns in the South, but I'll start here in the middle of the page, vision and value statement. Town of Blythewood is a safe, clean, friendly, prosperous community that is welcoming to visitors with a vibrant small town, rural atmosphere, great natural beauty, and amenities that facilitate a high quality of life for residents of all ages and interests. Blythewood strives to be a model of contemporary small-town America, seamlessly touching the past through its rural and historic character while actively embracing a bright future. I know that's a mouthful, but again, it combines all our values that we've talked about into one succinct statement. So what do we want to do as a town? High level of services, those few services I spoke about that we do, we want to make sure they're high level. Display honesty, respectfulness, and fairness in all relationships. Support health and economic well-being of our citizens and businesses. Preserve our historic small-town character. Encourage opportunity, services, and infrastructure that allows people of all means to live, work, and visit here. And address public concerns and opportunities promptly and effectively. We recognize that our mission can be achieved only by the exchange of information and that through teamwork, we can maintain an environment in which we can maximize our potential. So that's the draft statement. Feel free to edit. Those of you who are much smarter than me, edit, add to, or take out, modify however you wish to see it, and we will work it together as a group. So back to the top. The actual vision, that was our kind of our working vision value statement itself, which led me to this. Blythe was an iconic southern community with the infrastructure to provide year-round cultural and recreational opportunities while protecting historic resources, preserving our history and small-town character, and ensuring respect for all people and the environment. So there we have that. Any comments, council members? So we're getting closer. This is our second edit. The first we put it all together. Now we're on phase 2.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Please, Councilman Brock.
On the second line of the vision, it says, while protecting historic resources, preserving our history. Isn't that somewhat redundant?
It could be.
Kind of say the same thing? Or am I mistaken there in your understanding of those?
Well, in my mind, it was protecting historic resources, the Hoffman House, the Langford Nord House, other homes like that. That would be protecting historic resources. And then preserving our history would be supporting the Blythewood Historical Society and Museum, holding historic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
So,
curious.
but yeah, feel free to send me an edit, and that's fine, as long as we're kind of catching. It may be all in one. But we do value history,
Without question.
both presentation as well as preservations, and education, so. Okay, great. Any other comments? Planning commissioners? Then we move to page 3, which is simply our core values, as I kind of made notes from citizens speaking. Outstanding community partner relations, and that will drive us to interface more with our Richland County Council members, our state legislators, both at the House, Senate level, and our congressional members as well. Our school district, too, members. So that's why I put that one there. Also, transparency and accountability. You've heard this body talk about this a lot. We openly communicate municipal information, and when we see that it's not the way we want it, now we're in the RFP proposal process for hiring a marketing firm, because we see that as a weakness. The information is not getting out as clearly and efficiently as it could. And since we have to spend that SAT 30% monies anyway, which we're going to talk about at our next council meeting at the end of this month, that's something that we want to do to maintain that transparency, let everyone know what's going on and get their feedback, like we're doing tonight. Inclusion, We value diversity, obviously. In the events we host, in the event, and all the programs we fund, and as our boards and staff, we value people from diverse backgrounds to bring to light their experiences and their visions into one to make Blythewood the best it can be. Leadership, we hold our leaders accountable and by being proactive and anticipate and respond to certain challenges, and we enforce fair and equitable treatment of all citizens that come before us. Either that's a zoning appeal, maybe that's a zoning request to change a zoning, but we treat everyone fairly and we hear them out and do what's best for the town. Lastly, stewardship. You've seen that. We started a very robust audit process, both financially. We're looking at our zoning audits by doing the comprehensive plan rewrite. We're looking at auditing our own funds that we spend. Are we doing it appropriately? Are we doing it in the eyes of the public? And are we doing it as most people would do their own finances at their own home, common sense wise? Any questions about those core values in Blythewood? And of course, we can add to this if you see something that you like. I mean, obviously, I tried to work in here, but they kind of get to be objectives. Like, we value our veterans. Well, we're going to talk about that on our objectives and how we do it under diversity. We'll have an objective to hold a Veterans Day event every year, which we do and continue to do that. Okay? And then, of course, I just listed here personal values that may trigger your thoughts. These are the Army values that I grew up with in 25 years of service and still working with the Army now. But the acronym is leadership, so it's loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Those are the values we expect from our soldiers, so we can modify that as we see fit as a town. But I think that's a great launching point to start with. And then, of course, I took what you've seen in the newspaper, what you've heard us talk about, you've heard us debate. As many of the big projects as we have, I boiled them down to 16. They talk about, and these are not in any priority order. Goal number 1 is not the first thing we're going to do. It's just as I wrote them out. Blythewood has a popular Veterans Park with service flags honoring combat veterans from Blythewood. That's something that's been asked of me from the Historical Society and other members to possibly do that here in our town somewhere inside the park or right in front of Town Hall. Another one is Blythewood is a destination for Christmas season, not only to come see our parade, but we have a new initiative where we will block off spaces all around the drive coming in, the main road, and then Alvina Haygood Loop. And then we have competitions where people come and set up a light display based on individual or corporate size, and we have citizens just drive through with a voting sheet, and when they leave, they drop it in a box, and then we tally the votes, and then the winner will get a prize of some type from the town and the recognition. And what that does is, Salute to Shoals was pointed to me as an example. If you've ever been out there and seen their light displays, kind of bring that here to Blythewood. Get more people out. It's safe. You don't have to get out of the vehicle. You just drive slowly around and vote on. Just something else to bring for the people of Blythewood here. And also highlight this area, this crown jewel of Blythewood here, the manor and the park. Moving on, McNulty Street and Creech Road have been modernized and are now the two center district. Maybe people are listening online, they didn't know, but SCDOT is going to extend Creech Road. It's going to come out by the football stadium on Main Street. And so that area will be a walkable. McNulty Road will be refinished and beautified with parallel parking, and you can park and you can walk to all the shops if you so choose to do so. Kind of like a Sandhills Mall, only much smaller scale. And then just the two bullets under that, or how do we get to that? Well, we do quarterly engagement. We're not engaging as much as I'd like to do for all those entities. And also the Planning Commission, when they rewrite the master plan, they'll have that picture of what it's supposed to look like for people to have access to online. Goal number 4 was Blythewood has expanded by 25% of total land mass due to annexation. And that's a mixture of voluntary annexation, which we're going to get to our questionnaire later, which will address this. People just don't know, and they kind of say this all the time, and our council will tell you. People show up to vote in our town hall elections, and then they find out right then that they don't live in the town of Blythewood. They say, I've lived here for 15 years, and I finally came to vote in a town election, I can't even vote. It's because they live a mile down Langford Road, which is outside our jurisdiction. So we want to capture those people if they wish to serve, if they wish to be on the planning commission or boards, because you have to be a resident in the town to serve in that capacity, or run for mayor, run for council, and you certainly do that if you live inside the town as a registered voter. Blythewood's Industrial Park across from Cobblestone Park on Blythewood Road. is the premier expansion location for the state of South Carolina. So we get those good Class A businesses, office-type structures in there with high-paying jobs, and that will expand, and we will control that definitely, so you don't have an increased huge amount of traffic flow in and out of there by large trucks, distribution companies. So we're trying to monitor that carefully. Blythewood is renowned for a large festival every month of the year, which draws many visitors, and we're this close to that. We have 10 large events that we do. We just have 2 months we have to find something to put in, and then we literally will have, that we sponsor as a town. There are other events like private concerts, private things that go on, but the things that we put our budget and effort behind, we will have one a month so that people and families will have something to do here in the Blythewood area. Okay, moving to, Blythewood has a new multicultural civic center, which will sponsor ethnic observances, and I said ethic again. I think it's an autocorrect. It's ethnic, not ethic. I'm sorry, I've done this 4 times now. Golly. But, and I haven't even talked to my good buddy Larry Griffin yet, but his organization, the Bethel-Hanbury Athletic Alumni Association, the group that saved the gymnasium from being torn down with this new BHE construction that's going on, because as many of you know, historically, that was the African-American high school during the days of unfortunate segregation, but that is near and dear to many people's hearts because they grew up there, went to school there. I used that gymnasium. I went to school there as a kid. So I appreciate him doing that and with taking the lead with his organization. But now we need to go further. We need to turn that into a civic center, and we need to host events there. I love when people come spend time in the manor. Believe me, Steve does too. It's starting to pay for itself, but we can also share and go over there to that gymnasium and have a civic event or 2 or 3 and celebrate over there in the old Blythewood school, Bethel-Hanbury School. Blythewood's, okay, a premier sports league venue and destination for the state of South Carolina. Y'all have heard me talk about this over and over. We will need other resources. We're not going to be able to get there ourselves, but it will, if we put it on a goal and we put it on the calendar, and this commission, this council and this planning commission start engaging our elected officials that have the access to those resources, possibly we can make that come to reality for our kids and adults alike, and picnic shelters and walking trails and parks that we desperately need here. Complete our streets, plan, design, and implement street sidewalks and the fencing across I-77. Again, that's going to be SCDOT driven, but we certainly can interface as elected officials to get the lobbying that we need to get those activities pushed through. Environmental stewardship. So we have electric vehicle infrastructure. If you don't know, right outside of one of the gas stations where Bojangles, what's that, the Exxon there? Right across from BP, there's one there, and then there are 2 in the Holiday Inn Express parking lot. So possibly now with some grants, if we get grant writers on the staff, we will expand that to more locations within the town, which will also help make us a destination as people want to take a trip. They want to stop here, plug their vehicle up if they have one of these hybrids or electric vehicles, and walk around our downtown area. So it's a win-win for everyone there. Looking at reduction of organic waste, there's a fellow called me from Resoil. It's a organic compost company right off Screaming Eagle Road, and he was just calling around to get more clientele. If you're a food service industry, what they like to do is any scraps you're going to throw away, instead of giving it to the old pig farmers like we used to do many years ago, you give it to this company, and they go back and make it into organic compost for farmers to use. So we can be a benefit and contribute there also. Adopt a Tree program here in the park. If you pay a small fee, you get a plaque for a loved one, and you dedicate a tree. That we're going to put that on our marketing panel, let more people know about that don't currently know. And of course, our walking paths and trails and our trail zoning, which we're going to hear about tonight for open areas and parks, wherever we can get it. Landowners and developers and such who want to participate in that, we will hopefully have that as an option to save it from being developed. Be creative in raising revenues. All these things cost money. We have some money, but if you want to be big and have these bold projects, you're going to have additional sources of revenue. So what does that look like? I personally do not like a millage idea, a property tax. We pay enough to the county, but possibly a sales tax of some type, a penny tax. We have a lot of transients up and down 77 who would stop off and contribute to that fund, and so we could raise money that way. And it's also fair for the people who live in and around Blythewood that come in and use our resources there. They would help pay that tax as well, instead of just the people who live in our small town limits. So it's more fair. Safety, security, we've talked about this here at the Manor. We talked about some vandalism. Steve brought up the idea of making some access gates right here. So every access point would be closed at dusk unless you had an event going on. So that would keep these vandals from coming in here and driving their trucks and such on these fields and tearing them up. And then, of course, that doesn't work. We go to Councilman Sloan Griffin, idea of a park ranger service of someone who is a commissioned officer who can serve a ticket or who can arrest someone for malfeasance. Or even if we just hire a deputy that's off-duty to serve hours of darkness. So we're thinking about that seriously. I'm meeting with a citizen here next week. She just changed it. I was supposed to meet today, but, and they have a walking group that they come and walk, and she says that they've been approached before by people trying to harass them and up to no good, and so that's just unacceptable. You come here to this place to exercise and participate in town activities. Last thing on your mind, you should never have to worry about somebody harassing you or trying to do bad things. So we're looking at that for a full-time service here. Goal 13, review all our ordinances. There may be something on the books from 80 years ago when the magistrates were here that just don't make sense, so it's time to clean house in that regard also. And then, of course, recognize our outstanding citizen contributions. 2 ways that we just talked about, and there may be more that you have that you can recommend. A Key to the Town program, where we give a key to the town for some outstanding citizen in the town of Blythewood. To me, that should be something that's done infrequently, so it has a larger impact. And then the one that we do frequently is Blythewood Brigadiers. I just put that name on there. A brigadier is a general with 1 star, so you're a Blythewood Star. But Blythewood Star doesn't sound right, but Blythewood Brigadier rolls off the tongue better. And then these are citizens who've done great things. Small business owner of the year, someone did something great and brought a big industry here to Blythewood, then they get a nomination and get an award, picture, paper, and then they join the long list, and we have something that annotates all these outstanding citizens for their contributions to town. Just a couple of ideas to recognize more folks, because we have a lot of them. Last 2, establish a visitor center. There's 50-50. Everybody I talk to, some people like the idea, some people don't. It's got to be open on Saturday and Sunday, because that's when people are coming here. Some people say it's a waste of money. The debate needs to be had, and we need to figure out if that's if that's a value to this town, then we need to do it, and if it's not, we need to just drop it and move on. And that's true with any of these. And then lastly, expand the Doco Meadows Park and Playground. We budget every year $20,000 for that playground. The last 2 years, we haven't spent the money on it. So it's a good thing. It goes back into general fund. However, the intent of that before my time was to expand and put a new piece of equipment in the park so kids have a bigger and bigger playground area until you reach a certain point. And then the Doco Foundation will say, that's big enough, you don't want to take over the amphitheater grass with playground equipment. But, you can add to it, refurbish it. So it's a great idea, so that's why I put it on here. So any questions about that, council members? I know we've talked about these a little bit, and there may be certainly more on their plates that they want to put as a goal. And as long as we align, when we finally approve the vision, then all these goals should align to one point in the vision. So if you're not doing things that are focused on your vision, then you're wasting time, in my opinion. You're not doing what your charter has told you to do. Comments, gentlemen?
What's your deadline on this?
The deadline for this?
Yeah.
Well, if we get feedback and I turn it back around, then we can look at it at our meeting in 3 weeks at the end of February. And certainly, what I wanted to do, to answer your question, the absolute drop dead is before our annual budget session. Because what are you going to fund? Well, what is our vision? And so you got to have something, a roadmap. So just as soon as we get it. Good question. Any other comments? Planning commissioners, any comments? Okay, well, let's see. Yeah, that concludes my strategic plan session, unless we have any other closing comments on that before we move to Charles zoning. No idea is a bad idea. You know me. Send your ideas. If you have neighbors that tell you this is what we ought to have, when are you going to get that splash park in the Doco Meadows I've been asked before? We could go on and on about that, but great ideas, and we just got to get them in front of the public. We agree, public likes the value, and then we proceed to fund it and put it up and manage it. Okay, I'm done talking tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to our distinguished Councilmember Sloan Griffin to discuss the Tross zoning concept here in Blythewood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, Mr. Williamson, did you want to lead that? I know we talked earlier today, and I'm fine with you leading that since you created a draft document. That's fine, Mr. Mayor.
Please,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Williamson.
Thank you, sir. I will end with that, I think, because I reviewed the draft document, and it is exactly what was put into the document the other week, and it looks good. It's clean. It is straightforward. And I don't think it will interfere with anything that we have on the books, outstanding legal or anything of that sort. Me and Ms. Burnett talked about that piece also, so we're fine with adding that at the pleasure of the Planning Commission with their votes there to come back to us, so. Pending that, yes, sir. And in my research, I could not find the exact definition of that. So my first thought was, if it's open space, it's the high-tension lines, not necessarily underground lines for use of lighting, restrooms, or whatever else that we put out there that need power. Or in, Wi-Fi connections or some type of fiber optic. Utility substations kind of seem, we don't want anything like down Farrell Road, right there at the intersection there. We don't want anything like that in there. Most certainly, we don't want bus shelters or benches when we don't even have the line coming through Blythewood anymore. So I think that everything else really falls in line and just give that added benefit when talking with developers in the future about, developing neighborhood space. So to encourage them, I hope you guys could see that, to use that as an encouraging tool to do it in the beginning instead of zoning a large piece of property. And that could give them that futuristic look to say, well, since they zoned it there, we could build later on, but go ahead and carve out that space in the beginning. And I think that would add security for homeowners in those prospective neighborhoods. So, with that being said, I think this is pretty simple and straightforward. That's all that I have to
Okay.
add.
Comments, council members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Brock.
I'll direct this question to Mr. Williamson, if you don't mind. I just glanced over this, and there are several setback requirements for a lot of these designations or these uses, I guess, within the TROS. Would there be a grandfather clause inserted somewhere in this? Because let's say, for example, a neighborhood wanted to, or an amenity center in a neighborhood wanted to come in and rezone the neighborhood pool or the neighborhood clubhouse as a TROS. And if they rezoned, they would be in violation of the setbacks. So, which wouldn't be through no fault of their own, because they were there prior to this zoning. I just would think that we'd want to have some sort of grandfather clause that would exempt or not put someone in violation of zoning, which I know can cause problems later on down the road, so that they would not be in violation. That would be my only recommendation, because, I mean, it may not be the case, but I could see there an instance where a swimming pool was in 50 feet of someone's property line, or a clubhouse. So I would just ask that, there be a grandfather clause inserted in here for pre-existing neighborhoods or amenity centers or whatnot that may want to use this zoning designation. That's the only comment I have, Mr. Mayor.
Other council members? It's a good thing. And another example of aligning to our values, we appreciate and support open, green space, public use parks, and that's what this zoning would assist us in doing, so. Good example.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
to that end, it is possibly the intent to get this to the Planning Commission in March. Would that be correct, Ms. Williamson? Question concerning maybe possibly why this is before us. One of the reasons it's before us, you look at the Cricken Tree situation, avoiding that situation moving forward or in the future. Is there any protection, Ms. Burnett, maybe you can speak to this as well. Is there any protection legally that we could put in this language to keep the desire of the original owner for a length of time versus an elected body or an appointed body recommending changing the zoning? Because we can entice developers with the TROS. It's a great idea. But we saw in the case of Cricken Tree, Richland County Council just flat overruled that, moved in a different direction, kind of unilaterally. Didn't listen to what the citizens were saying. I totally agree that this is appropriate. This gives us yet one more, arrow in our quiver, talking to developers long-term in Blythewood. What I'm trying to figure out is there a way we can put more teeth to it just to keep a planning commission from saying, it doesn't fit our need right now, we're going to rezone it. We approve that rezoning. We send it to council. The current town council doesn't have the history of the TROS. Boom, they rezone it, and we're in the exact same situation as the residents of Cricken Tree. Is there any layer of protection that we can have?
I mean, for the town, I think, this is the tool, and so, anything that is on the books, can obviously be changed with a council decision and 2 readings. I'm not aware of something more concrete than that that would preserve it. But from a town's perspective, of course, the landowner and covenants and restrictions, those types of things, carry even more weight. But Ms. Burnett probably knows more detail about that than I do.
I have to say, I won't say I know more than you do. We're really lucky to have him. The more I've worked with him, he's a wealth of information and knowledge. What I was going to say reiterates what he said. I really feel like, especially if we're working with the planners before they get started, we can help lead them and guide them with how they set up their homeowners association, their own rules and regulations, because we're seeing in another situation we have in another development how that language has teeth even in court. to bind the developers and the town, and how it proceeds forward. So getting that language in early, is it bulletproof? No, because you have homeowners who could vote as well. But typically, if those are written to be protective of that land, especially protective of greenland, they don't necessarily want to go back. It's not to their best interest to go back on that. It may affect the value of their lands, as we have seen, right? So I think having a two-tiered approach, one being what that we can put in our ordinances now, but also working with them proactively with their homeowners association regulations and rules. Did that answer that?
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about Charles zoning? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the next discussion item, Part C, Comprehensive Plan Strategy. And I will just tee this up and then ask Mr. McHenrick to make comments. The Planning Commission, at the same time the town council was going forward on deciding about our vision, values, objectives, they were doing the same thing. And that's why these joint sessions will come in handy as we communicate and learn from one another and not duplicate efforts. And so what the Planning Commission has done is, actually, I applaud it, is before we go about the people's business and drawing up a comprehensive plan, which will set the pattern for our growth in the next 10 years, why don't we have a stakeholder questionnaire and get the input from citizens who don't normally just come up here to our meetings, but maybe they're busy, maybe they work in the evenings, whatever, and just don't have the time or the access to come here. And let's just send out these questionnaires and get their feedback, and then do a little data analysis, see what's trending, what's the most popular, and then morph that into a comprehensive plan, which will satisfy the desires and needs of our citizens, both inside the town and outside. Some would argue you only need to focus on inside the town. What I would say, but we have stakeholders who live just a mile or two down the road. So having their input, and by the way, this would differentiate between the two. It asks where you live, it talks about are you in the town or out of town, gender, age, why did you choose Blythewood to live here? And there are many answers you can put. Where do you work? And it's not specifically the company, in the town, out of the town, I'm a student, retired, what have you. So you're getting the demographics of your population, and then you decide what their desires and needs and wants are, and then you put that into a comprehensive plan. Because it's not all about just the 5 people here and the 6 or 7 people who serve on our planning commission. It's about the citizens who live, work, and play here. What is your biggest concern about the future of Blythewood? That's a good question, open-ended, so people can write their concern. Have you read the comprehensive plan? What changes within Blythewood, both negative and positive, over the past 10 years have you noticed? So this is a great feedback mechanism. How do you rate the quality of life in Blythewood? Do you believe that it has improved or declined recently? Recreational activities and space, how do you rate those? How do you receive most of your news? Through website, email, newspapers, Facebook, what have you. That will engage us on how to communicate with our population. Would you encourage or discourage the following? And we talk about residential single-family homes, residential multifamily, senior assisted living, agriculture, farming, retail development, public rec space, light industrial manufacturing, hotels and motels, convenience stores, tourism-based businesses, fast food, department stores, and service-based businesses. Would you like to see another land use in Blythewood? Blythewood should continue to preserve additional agricultural land, true or false, yes or no? Blythewood should actively pursue its own industrial space. Blythewood should pursue more town services such as police and fire. Historical structures in Blythewood should continue to be preserved and added to. What do you think is missing from Blythewood? There's a good open-ended question that we get feedback on all the time. The previous version of the comprehensive plan emphasized the desire to maintain a small town. Which of the following community features have the most impact on the town's ability to achieve this desire? And you can choose up to 4. Overcrowded housing, architectural styles, amount of traffic, lack of walkable space, preservation of historic buildings, landscaping, etc. Do you find the overall traffic road system in and around Blythewood is adequate? I already know the answer to that. Do you feel the town should borrow money in order to modernize its facilities? Do you feel Blythewood should continue to annex property in order to grow its boundaries? How do you feel about the current recreation space? Do you feel the following services are adequate? We talk about police, fire, ambulance, public library, stormwater, and zoning. And then, of course, do you attend local government meetings? Yes, no, or never? And of course, I was going to add too, do you know that Blythewood does not have a property or income tax on its residents? I want to ask that question before then I ask, would you like to annex into the town? Because when you ask somebody want to annex, they say, why, what's your property tax? So you let them know, did you know we don't have one? And then would you like to annex your property into the town limits in order to be able to vote in Blythewood elections, serve on town commissions, or even run for town office? Because some people don't realize that either they don't know you have to be right in the town limit to run for these offices, or they just didn't realize that, or to be a planning commissioner, I should say. A lot of them know you got to live in the town to run, but they figure, I just live right outside of town. Why can't I be on your planning commission? Well, because that's state law. You got to be a resident of the town. So that's a great job from the planning commission. I think Mr. McHenrick and his group's intent is for us to do what I wanted to do with our vision statement. If you had anything to add, or you think you have more appropriate questions or something we missed, please get that feedback to them. And then we're going to talk about the mechanism on how we're going to get this out, by mail, online, what was the other one?
Monkey survey?
Yeah, no, Survey Monkey. Telephonic, like you can call in and leave your answers on the phone. I'm trying to model it after the census, because you had 3 ways in the census. You could do it online, you could do it by filling out the paper and mail it back in, or you could call a 1-800 number and give your answers over the phone. So, having said that, I'll turn over to Mr. McHenrick for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as you said earlier, this was kind of a culmination of what a lot of other towns, how they were asking their questions and what they were asking in towns about Blythewood's size. We are utilizing the COG and the Comprehensive Plan Rewrite. And our biggest challenge, I believe, and we spoke on the phone, both myself and Malcolm spoke with you about dovetailing these processes. A 2 to 3 year plan on the town's part, a strategic plan, the Planning Commission feels like has to dovetail in certain ways with the comprehensive plan and the master plan. So as we prepare to rewrite those, I said this at the strategic planning session as well, it's very important to us to have those two mesh together very seamlessly. If we head down a road for the strategic plan and it is maybe not in total disagreement, but heading in another direction of the comprehensive plan or the master plan, then we've kind of wasted our time. And we have also set a course of events that will ultimately have to be discussed and dealt with by town council if we're going in opposite directions. The other thing I personally feel and am trying to steer the Planning Commission in that direction is to look beyond, and we said this during the strategic plan, look beyond the problem of the day and try to look at the solution or the opportunity that that problem today might present. I mean, we know, we've spoke about it. Blythewood Farms is going almost right across the street from Town Hall. They are not in the town of Blythewood. But that development has got to impact the comprehensive plan, has got to, all right? Then even look beyond that. So take those, what we currently view as weaknesses, flip them into a strength, and use them in the comprehensive plan as a tool to get the ear of Richland County. We don't have the infrastructure in Blythewood that we need, but we know right on the edge of town is going to be a massive housing development that will put additional strain on the infrastructure of Blythewood. So it would be our stance that we have to use that as a strength in the comprehensive plan as we look at the next 5-10 years. I do agree that there is a pretty sizable deficiency in the 2-year window, 2 to 3 year window, which I believe is your whole intent here. let's put it down, put feet to it, and figure out how to start eating this elephant, because it's not going anywhere. I've spoken before, and I enjoyed reading the Blythewood Comprehensive Plan and Master Plan. Some people don't enjoy that kind of reading. I find it fascinating. But I believe we as a planning commission, not only this tenure, but previous tenures, we're only dealing with the here and the now, not necessarily looking or passing up to town council what those wishes in the comprehensive plan and the master plan were. So, you know, state legislation dictates we rewrite the comp plan, we keep it updated, which we're going to do. But I very much agree with you that if we're going to do it, we might as well use it. So as you struck out to say, what's a questionnaire maybe that we could use for the strategic plan long-term, we were asking the same question, and the COG sent a fairly uniform questionnaire that I believe they use with comp rewrites. But there were not very many open-ended questions there. And I really do believe this is an opportunity for us to really dig deep in the town of Blythewood where people choose to spend their time. We spoke about homeowners associations, church, civic groups, golf groups. It really is unlimited where we can find people that where they spend their time. Obviously, it's not at joint planning commission town council meetings. But if we can find them and we can locate them, have them fill out the survey, but then we have to be ready for what's going to happen, because this is a absolute onslaught of information. If we get it to the people we want to have it, then we need to be ready to respond to what they're saying. The fascinating thing to me, going through and kind of arranging these questions, was the Myers-Briggs test. I don't know how many of you have ever taken one, but one question kind of leads to another question. And the way you answer one question is very telling about how you answer another question. The way these questions in some of these towns were written is very similar. Once we determine a person's age, that tells us what that whole age group, you put that whole age group together and you read those surveys, now you're going to know how that age group feels. You're going to know if they live in Blythewood or if they're only working in Blythewood. So there's a wealth of information that we're going to gain that I think the Planning Commission can use in the comp rewrite, and you can certainly use, town council can use in their strategic three-year plan. So it was important to us as a Planning Commission. I know Mr. Gorge and I have spoke several times as he's heading up the actual rewrite of the comp plan, but we wanted to kick it off in a very positive way for the citizens of Blythewood, and that's why we call them stakeholders. If you're a citizen of Blythewood, or you work and earn your living in Blythewood, that's what you are. You're a stakeholder. And you do have a voice with what's going to happen in the next 10 years, and we really want to tap into that and hear what they say. So a long explanation to we agree, and we're going to try to dovetail these two processes. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to do this, to sit in on a town council planning commission meeting. It's our Monday, but y'all joined us, and we really appreciate the fact that you did. So often, the tone of a meeting tells a lot to a volunteer commission. Yes, we can read your minutes, but when we're here and we hear the discussion and we see how it flows, it's very helpful to the commission. I'm very glad we're going to do this on a quarterly basis. I think it'll be beneficial to both groups. So that's kind of where we stand on the questionnaire. And again, your additions, very good, but we would ask for and take any changes, additions, deletions that anybody might add. I'm going to let Malcolm touch on the comp plan and the strategic plan and how we're dealing with the COG outside the questionnaire. So I appreciate the time.
Please, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you all. That's a great summary, Rich, and I'm not one for a lot of words unless I really get, a fire under my tail and then, hard to shut up. But the COG is there to listen to our vision, our mission, what we're hoping to see in the town over the next 5 to 10 years. And they're very supportive of the approach that we're taking. They provide the effort and the statistics or the number crunching in the comprehensive plan, but they very much need the feedback from us to make it a true planning document that represents the needs of the residents and businesses. And that's really what's driven this approach, using a questionnaire to engage everybody, or as many people as possible, so that we're working on solid information to develop a workable plan. And that's really the hardest thing to do. This will be my 3rd comprehensive plan, so I've had a bit of experience over the last 10 years or so. Planning the plan is easy. Writing the plan is easy. The hardest part is implementing the plan. And I've seen our efforts at that over the last 10 years or so. And what I'm encouraged to hear is your vision of the plan being an active topic for discussion at council meetings, at the planning commission meetings, that everything that we're doing is towards fulfilling that mission and vision. And it has been a matter of fact that we've been driven by the priorities of the day, month after month after month. And it's always been easy to sidestep the plan, or we'll come back to that next month or next quarter. And before you know where you are, a year has gone and 2 years have gone. So I just reiterate what you said before, that everything that we do as a council, as a commission, as a board, needs to be aligned with the vision and mission. So I absolutely applaud your efforts to get that detailed in a meaningful and comprehensive way, because that will be the foundation for the plan moving forward. So I think the only other thing I would want to say is that we're trying to follow best practices in preparing this plan to make it a useful working document, and everything that I've heard tonight points very strongly towards that. So thank you very much for your leadership in that direction. That'll be a great help to us.
Absolutely, and thank you all for your efforts. I'll follow up on what Councilman Griffin asked before. Is there a timeline that you want this back? Or we're going to talk about that later, or?
The questionnaire?
You're right.
Yes.
I believe following our meeting tonight, same thing. I would probably say at our March meeting, we want to be in the position to approve the survey.
Question.
Go ahead.
Our last conversation about the COG and how far you're trying to expand, your outreach. Have you determined that outreach effort? Are you going to do the zip code or?
Well, we are going to discuss that tonight.
Okay.
When you and I spoke, that was strategic planning. So
Yes.
we're going to discuss it as a commission tonight, hopefully bring a recommendation back up to town council before your next meeting.
Question.
Please, Councilman Griffin, Larry Griffin.
The one question I have is, with the survey, which part of this is approaching or looking at the annexation that we were talking about? Here we're talking about what the mission is to keep Blythewood a small rural town. Basically, that's past us now. And now that we're looking at whether we're going to expand or not expand, what part of the survey or the comprehension plan are we addressing the annexation?
I can speak to the survey. There are a couple questions in the survey related directly to annexation.
25.
Yeah.
And the question 25 particularly, but even more so, the one the mayor recommended, which I think is a great addition, to wrap up this survey with a statement saying, if you are annexed into the town of Blythewood, it's not going to cost you any money, because I do agree, surrounding towns and people who are interested in annexation generally do it because of pocketbook issues, not because of a desire to just annex somebody. So a disclaimer, or disclaimer is the wrong word, an informative statement at the bottom of this survey, as well as a contact information, point of contact. If my daughter's one of them. My daughter's house is literally on the town line of Blythewood. And she is one of the ones that thought she could vote in the last election, and went to Mr. Cook and was like, I thought I lived in Blythewood. He pulled the map up, and her house is literally on the line. So that's 1 acre that I know we can get pretty easily.
I know,
But to those points, I think we need to be very specific about how we're asking the annexation question and not shying back from it. And I think that's the intent in the overall comprehensive plan, because it's certainly the will of council.
one, and I know we talked about, how you answer question 25. If you say yes, then it goes to another question in an electronic format. Have you all thought of, and I know you're going into a meeting shortly, but have you thought about getting more information, name, address, phone number, email address, as a supporting question, so that someone can do a more formal outreach to that resident?
Well, in the survey setup, particularly the ones that you do online, so a person would have the option of listing their name, address, phone number, email address, but then quickly check a box to not use that. So we want that information. I would rather a yes to 25 and somebody not share their contact information with me. I'll take both and. But certainly if somebody filled out who they are filling out the survey and said yes to 25, we would want to get them information back on how you proceeded with annexation.
And it could be good either way, and I get it. If they don't share the information, at least that gives us a percentile
Absolutely.
of, 40% of the total population we surveyed would like to be annexed.
Correct.
And there could be some clues in here, like age and things like that we could really look on some more detailed maps that could help us kind of pinpoint where that population may be.
So, and you're no stranger to surveys, but as you look at, somebody says they're retired. Yes, they live here. Let's say they live in Cobblestone, they're retired, and they agree with annexation. And then you have somebody say, I don't live in Blythewood, but I work in Blythewood, and I would support annexation. So those are all very, and we're only really tying very few questions together. But there's really a daisy chain to be laid out here of just a wealth of information depending on how individuals answer these questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and you're right along exactly what I was thinking. And again, when we started this process, we said, okay, annexation sounds good because people came to vote. They want to annex their property in. So then we say, how big do you want to annex? Well, let's just use the zip code. That's an easy circle to draw on the map, all the way out to Hardscrabble Road, all the way out to Highway 321, Fairfield County line, all the way down right before Walmart, Killian Road and all that. So there's your 2901 and 6 that everybody has, and use our post office here. So this survey will serve as an initial question to the people who fill it out, and then we get the answer back, and Councilman Sloan Griffin is right on the mark with a GIS system, that government information system. So anybody who said yes, we plug their address in, and it highlights red, and guess what? They're touching the line. So we can call them tomorrow and mail them a form and have them sign it, and they can be on after, I think, 2 votes or in the process, but certainly by the end of the year, they would be a citizen in Blythewood. It's a simple process when you have a volunteer. So that's the low-hanging fruit that we would pick up immediately. Then if somebody lives way out, say Crickentree, and they all say yes, but people halfway in between, there's no connectivity. It's not contiguous, so we have to know that we put that on the back burner, color code that yellow, and then we got to work to get there from here. So it's a logical campaign plan on how to do it, but this is a good way to do it. And I would submit, we just need to look at how the Census Bureau operated. They've cornered the market on it, and I worked for them for a year, so no longer, there's no association anymore, so it's not a paid political advertising. But you get a postcard in the mail, and it has a website, and it has a phone number. That's the first contact you got. And so most of us just took our phone as we're waiting on our coffee in the morning, and we did our census, or you get your laptop out or whatever. And that's, number one, that's the easiest and fastest way. So then we have that data. Number two would be on the bottom of the card, if you don't have internet, here's a phone number you can call. That means we're gonna have to spend up a little money to hire somebody to take all these calls in. And number three is, if you wish us to send you a written packet with a self-stamp, return stamp envelope, whatever you call it, we'll send that to you. And because if you like to touch paper, a lot of people do, and then they'll fill it out, fold it up, put it back in the envelope, already has a stamp on it, it comes right back to us. So, but instead of sending all these packages out, just a postcard to start with, and we're gonna have to outsource it, we're gonna have to spend a little money, get somebody to quickly spin up a modern website with the little touch points Councilman Griffin's talking about. If you trigger a point, number three, if it's yes or no, well, if you're a yes, it'll just jump you down to 7 because 4, 5, and 6 don't apply to you. You know, that kind of thing. You've all done them before, you know what I'm talking about. So great idea. I can't wait to get going on this. So at the end, when it's done, we'll have at least the general idea, from my perspective, what annexation's looking like. From their perspective, what people want. So they want more sports complexes. Well, let's start looking at the map and where could that be as a possibility, or cross zoning if we have that, and so on and so forth. So it's an exciting time to make something that's really gonna work and be tangible, and we can be held accountable, and every quarter come back and report results. So, any other comments?
I'd like to say something.
Please. Yes, ma'am. Ms.
No,
Burnett.
that surprises you.
No, not at all.
I have some notes to give you, and it's scribble, but
No, great.
hopefully it will be helpful. But if you guys are going to be collecting personal information on people, I would recommend that we definitely put on this that we are not going to share or sell their information, because that's such a problem these days, for one thing. Another thought is to put this on our Facebook site and allow them to share it with other people from the Blythewood area. Because people like answering little things on Facebook, so 2 little things.
Thank you.
Great, good input. Anybody else? Sir.
Couple questions.
Larry Griffin.
A lot of people, when I talk to them about annexation, they ask me, what's the advantage of being in town? That's my answer.
Go ahead, go.
From my personal opinion would be representation. I feel like, so I really feel like Blythewood is at a turning point with regards to, I really do struggle with what value is the town of Blythewood providing to its citizens, especially its business owners. We had a chamber meeting where Mr. Phil had organized and had the business owners and they had a forum and they spoke on the panel as to, why they're being taxed. And they're like, I don't know, where their tax dollars are going, and it seems unfair to them or whatnot. So it seems to be a contention with that. But for me, as a citizen of Richland County, I feel like at least I have Brock and Salone and Mr. Franklin to say, I have these issues with Richland County. What can we, is there something that we can do, to raise it with, directly with Richland County? So I think it's definitely direct representation. We have a say with regards to our local community, in such a forums like this. So I would, and I'm not having to pay for it.
Right. Good point.
I think it's a win-win. I do, some of the notes that I wrote for this evening, and I think it's probably a point that maybe you were trying to make as well, is like where you get to the point of where are we no longer considered a small town, no longer considered rural, because by definition of the USDA, rural housing I mean, there's a sliver of Richland County right now, and I guarantee you by the time we get that new census tract information, once it's published, we're not gonna have any rural housing funding financing that can be provided except for Fairfield County. So, long-winded, but, you know, I think, you know, so I get a say, you know, that's what I would be pitching, you know, so.
Go ahead, Councilman Sloan Griffin.
I was just gonna add to, Councilman Griffin Senior. I had a conversation with Mr. Williamson earlier today, and it included a lot of different things. The tross was the main topic, but we talked about some GIS operations that we talked about in the past to help with annexation and give these clear dashboards to help us see the data. But also in that piece, remember I said it was something else in my mind, but it is that of putting together a trifold type of information on what annexation is to Blythewood, and actually go through and list these benefits, and leading up to the time when Mr. Cook was beginning to depart. That's some of the conversations we were having, me and him, was let's put together some check marks and say, this is one, you know, no millage, you know, representation, you know, all of this stuff, veteran-friendly community. So we want to see all of these things and give some good examples so that when we do run into somebody, we can say, here, this tells you everything about the benefits of being in Blythewood. So I don't think that would take too long. I asked Mr. Williamson that maybe a week or two, me and him sit down and take a look at some of those GIS operations, and we'll have that conversation and get with everyone. It's just not a me thing, it's everybody here, and we may miss something that you guys may see. So I think you'll be proud of that end product there. Thank you, sir.
Yep, that's a great point. And let's go on, let's get in the Wayback Machine and go back a little bit, shall we? So we decided to start increasing our events here in the town park and other areas for the enjoyment of our citizens. So we started doing that. So word of mouth came around. The rodeo's dynamite. It grows every year. We're doing things like Oktoberfest. We're doing African-American history celebrations. We're doing big popular events. And so then this council got together and said, okay, well, how can we improve this? How can we monetize the manor more and the park? Well, you have to have marketing. You have to get the word out. So then we went down the path, and that's where we are today, where we're looking at RFPs for a marketing company, and this is exactly why. Because as we moved annexation, to Councilman Sloan Griffin's point, and Larry, to your question, you have to market to people to let them know. It's just another way to communicate, is what marketing is. And so you have to target it, and you have to tell folks, why would you want to join the town? Well, because your voice is louder here than anywhere. Where else can you go and meet an elected official in the grocery store? And don't judge me if I'm buying beer when you catch me. And you can have a conversation with your town mayor or mayor pro tem or any council member, or you see him at church, or you see him at the ball field when your kids are playing baseball together, or meetings like this, where you get your say, you get plenty of time and access to your local elected officials. They say all politics is local. I'm sure you've heard that before. Very true. We can testify to it up here. But your voice is louder because you can make an influence by talking to your elected officials every day. You can serve when you're in the town limits, on the PC, on the BZA, on the bar. You can serve on other committees. You can serve on this town council. You can run and be elected mayor of the town if you live in the town. But you can't if you live outside. Another benefit. No, like I said, no tax, no millage. We don't have a property tax. We don't have any tax other than the ones that are passed on, the franchise fees for the right-of-ways and things like that of utilities. Green space, you've heard us talk about it. We're taking action. We're trying to get Tross on the books. Then we'll start employing it where people want us to. And so you are somewhat, and I say somewhat to Mr. McHenrick's comments earlier, you're protected and your green space will stay that way, and at least while you're elected officials who put it in place. Now, granted, 10, 15 years now, you get a new board, you might sell your property and then now somebody wants to rezone, but that's a whole hurdle you have to get over in order to do that. I wouldn't be willing to change it back. So the water and utilities, you now have a bargaining group that's much larger. Now we can go to Columbia and turn everybody's water back over to a larger city, a larger municipality with better service. And that's what I understand is a concern now with many of our citizens. So you can't do it now, we don't have the customer base, but you triple or quadruple the size of Blythewood, now you have a bargaining position to be in to get these utilities. So that's what I would say, Larry. It's not, and one last thing, and I don't like saying it because people say I don't like Columbia. That's not true. I love Mayor Benjamin down there. But if you don't annex into Blythewood, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you might be in Columbia, and that comes with a hefty price tag on top of what you're already paying at the county level. So I would just say that. If Blythewood can pull you in, then you're not going to ever be annexed by another municipality, which may not have these same values, and I'm not, maybe they do, but again, it's assurance that you're going to be taken care of right here at the local level. So that's what I would say, and we put that on a marketing plan, like Councilman Griffin just said, of trifold, you mail that out, and as we start talking to people about annexation. Any other comments? Good discussion.
I do.
Yes, sir, please, Councilman Griffin.
I know this is not the meeting for it, but there are about 3,000 people in the town of Blythewood.
I bet it's 8 now, when the census comes back.
Okay, when the census comes.
I think it's going to be, it used to be 3,000, you're exactly right, yes, sir.
And
But we've grown a lot.
when I look at the numbers and we talk about annexation, none of the donut holes are addressed. We only talk about subdivisions. And therefore, we're gonna have a whole town of subdivisions. So, for me, I'm not in a subdivision. So what is the advantage? I mean, nobody's talking to me about being in the town. I heard, we just talked about the Blythewood Farms that's coming across the street from me. We're talking about how we're gonna get them basically into the town. Where there's houses right down the street from there that we have no concept of what we're gonna do or say or get them in. We're only talking about the large measurements. So, in my opinion, that's always gonna be screwed. The final result is gonna be screwed because you're only talking about people who live in subdivisions. You're not gonna get a true answer.
Well, and I certainly do believe, I believe to your point, a subdivision conversation dominates the here and now. I also agree with you by looking at the map, there are a lot of donut holes, and that needs to be rectified. But we have to purpose that. You have to go after it. You have to look at the map in a way that is both and, a double-edged sword, because we can't let large tracts of land lay unpurchased or for sale that we're not actively trying to annex to keep control of the growth or what kind of growth. But secondly, you do have to look at an annexation map in means of a donut hole, where certainly there's nothing for the town of Blythewood to gain monetarily, but there's a lot to be gained because of what we're doing for the citizens that may be in the middle of that donut hole or surrounding the donut hole, and all it takes is conversation. Because if you sit down with somebody face to face and say what we've said here, and I hope a lot of people are watching, but it's not going to cost you anything. You get to talk to your elected officials. You get to serve. There's a lot of people out there who just want to serve. And Senior Mr. Griffin, I did not see you at the polling place. I know you were there. I missed you the last election. With the exception of you, I saw 4 people at the polling place during the last election, and I heard the comments of people coming out of that polling station saying, I came up here to vote and I can't vote. So if they're unaware of where they can vote and where they can't, the fact that they're in or on the edge of a donut hole is probably like speaking a foreign language to them. So we have to literally grab that map and go after, intentionally go after what makes sense for growing the town of Blythewood. So I totally agree with you. It dominates conversations to say neighborhoods, Blythewood Farms, or big patches of land, Redgate. I mean, there's not a single house on Redgate, but it dominates a lot of the Planning Commission's thoughts and energies. Because it's not what's there now, it's what's to come. So I mean, I hope that speaks to your concern a little bit, because rural area outside of Blythewood matters. It has got to matter in the overall annexation plan, or we're just missing the boat.
Well, I totally agree with you on that. That's why I brought this point up. I mean, we're talking about the farms, which is a rock throw from the manor, but Sandfield Road is a shorter rock throw than the farm. We hear nothing about Sandfield Road. I understand why Boney Road was annexed into the town. That was for political reasons. It got annexed, but it wouldn't have been annexed if it had not been for that situation. There are a tremendous amount of places, like you said, if you look at the map, that are donut holes, get no consideration at all.
Just let me clarify, because I don't see what you're saying. When I talk about annexing and the mailing the cards, that's gonna be everybody. That's not gonna be just Cobblestone and Ashley Oaks and all the Oakhurst. It's gonna be everybody in that area, to include people who live in a donut hole and who don't. And lastly, before I turn it over to Councilman Brock, Mr. Williamson, Mr. Cook brought up one time in some meeting, and I can't recall it, but the state legislature was gonna take up a bill that was gonna authorize municipalities after a set period of time to automatically annex a donut hole, even without the concurrence of the property owner or anything. But the rule was gonna be, if you annex a piece of property all the way around someone, because they don't wanna join, there's a set period of time, and then they automatically become annexed. If you could look into that or ask him, I would appreciate it. That'd be something good to let the planning commission know too, because that's a nice way to do it without having to go through the nut roll and all the others, but especially when you don't have a millage and you don't have property tax, should be something. But yeah, Larry, it's harder to contact individual homeowners outside of a neighborhood, so I don't want to lead you to believe we're not thinking about them, because all those cards and everything we do will include them also. Because if there is someone who's touching the town limits and they're not annexed, but they want to be, we can do that in a matter of, fill out a couple pieces of paper. Councilman Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Griffin, I don't think that, I understand what you're saying by neighborhoods dominate the conversation of annexation, but every neighborhood we've discussed is part of the town. So they're not going to be even in they're not even in consideration, period. We're not going to mail out cards to people who are already annexed into the town. You'd mail out cards to people who are not annexed into the town. Those donut holes are there for a reason. It's because Blythewood had voluntary annexation. And if the property owner did not want to voluntarily annex into the town and everybody else around them did, well, then they created their own donut holes. And I don't believe we've ever had, as far as I know, from what I can tell, any sort of forced annexation. I don't believe you can legally do that. So that's why there are these donut holes. I've talked to people who are not residents of the town, but either butt up against the town or a donut hole, and I say, hey, why don't you annex into the town? And the response I get is, I'll never annex into the town. Well, why not? I'm not interested. There's no benefit in it for me. So that's where the marketing and the education comes in. And we can target those donut holes. We can target those rural areas. And those are going to be the areas that we target anyway. It is easier to cast a wide net in the neighborhood and catch 100, 200, 300 residences. But that doesn't mean they're any more valuable. You just catch more with a net that, allows you to touch multiple homes with one throw versus one throw only touching two potential properties.
I think you're referring to us talking about Crick and Tree. Is that right, Larry?
My whole point was not the subdivision that's already in. I'm talking about the ones that are being built that we're going.
Blythewood, okay, the farms, okay.
I mean, we're still going at subdivisions because it, like you said, it's low-hanging fruit.
It is the low-hanging fruit, yes.
But the people who are in the donut holes can't get in because of the contiguous rule.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead.
So I think one piece that will fix a lot of those issues, I know we're looking at the large tracts of land, but when you have a visual piece on the board, that will allow you to see those potential donut holes. Because to get from here to Cricken Tree, you got some big tracts, some large tracts of land that you could just plop, and then it kind of supersede, and you leave an island of people that you could still move on. But I think when you have a visual, and this is the important piece of having dashboards, you can see that map, you can see the potential of you creating a donut hole, and if that person did not respond, we have options. We can try to mail out again, we can call, and worst case scenario, we knock on the door. So some of those pieces of a donut hole, we're gonna have to go out and attack it in that fashion to see where they mine it. And if they just don't want to come into town, I mean, we're not gonna drag them into the town. We're gonna have to see if the legal piece of that legislation, if it was filed in what time frame. You know, if it's 5 to 7 years or 10 years, then we might have to wait that potential donut hole out that 10 years. But I do think once we get a visual component on a screen and we're sitting there studying a map, we'll have a better representation of what we're thinking about and seeing in reality of annexation.
Other comments? All right, moving on to action items this evening. The first is the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee appointment. I know Commissioner Malcolm Gorge has served faithfully and loyally over the past 5 years, has it been? Right, Malcolm has been our representative from the town to the Penny Tax Advisory Committee, and his term ends on the 5th of February. But in order for him to get more time out on the golf course, he's decided to not volunteer, which I understand. He's been there a long time. It is someone else's turn to be there. So tonight, we want to appoint a new member. And so having said that, I will turn it over to Councilman Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Mr. Gorge, thank you for your service to the town as a council member, as a member of the Planning Commission, I believe before council and currently, and your service on the TPAC committee. I thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, members of council, it gives me honor to make a recommendation tonight for the TPAC committee. If he is willing to serve, and I believe that he is, I would like to formally recommend the Planning Commission Chairman, Rich McKendrick, to be the Blythewood representative on the TPAC committee. Mr. McKendrick served with me when I was chair of the Planning Commission. He was served as the vice chair. He has been very dedicated from the moment he stepped onto that commission. He is even more dedicated now that he's the chairman, as we all heard tonight by his wonderful summary of the comp plan, the strategic plan with the survey, and then the things that he is doing with the Planning Commission. I think he would be a great addition to the TPAC committee, and he would be a worthy representative of Blythewood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Any comments, council members? I think that's a great nomination. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, sir. I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Rich McKendrick as the Blythewood representative to the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee as the Blythewood representative.
Been probably motion and seconded to appoint Mr. McKendrick, but before we do, for discussion, sir, would that benefit you, and do you desire?
No, thank you very much. I'd be honored to serve like that.
Well, thank you, sir. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you, sir. Now we move to ordinance number 2021.001, the mask ordinance. I think we're all familiar with this. We've extended this ordinance, I believe, twice now. This will be another extension for a 61-day period unless rescinded before that time. I think it's already been read into the record.
I got Sarah Lynn pulling up the dashboard.
Okay.
Just in case there's questions, I'll explain that.
Sure. Councilman Sloan Griffin.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to turn around. I hadn't seen the dashboard today, so, look at a ton of dashboards every day. So what you're looking at there, this is what I'm talking about, a visual representation. So let me point that out. Sarah Lynn, if you could zoom in on Richland County, come up to Blythewood, so you can zoom in a little bit more. So that's us here on that map, so you can see all the other municipalities around us, counties, and what they have in place. So currently, we're showing, we have a mass ordinance in place. It's required. The county follows suit the same way. If you click on Ridgeway, and you see suggested use, so they don't have an ordinance in place. If you click anywhere outside of Ridgeway, should pop up Fairfield County. There you go. So the same use, but if you go up and you'll see in Winsboro, and you see it's highlighted, so they have a mass ordinance in place. So we're kind of on that island peak. Everyone in Richland County besides, I think, Irmo and down towards Eastover, I believe. If you stroll, go up. I can't remember. No, I'm sorry. I feel like the weatherman. So if you could go a little bit more. I can't remember which. Yeah, Eastover. That's what it was. So I think it makes sense, just in short form, to keep it going. We do have 2 other active strains of COVID out there, and I'm not going to talk about them right now because I'm still being briefed on them and their potentness in relations to the vaccine. So, but I think that we have done a good job at statewide, giving folks that option. I don't perceive a statewide mass ordinance piece being implemented, but I do see it becoming more of a common sense factor because over time, the counties that have one in place is dropping off. So at one point, there was a larger number of counties. The municipality number has pretty much stayed around the same. I think the highest was somewhere around maybe 62, 63. So as they come up to the point where we are now, some of them are choosing to drop it off and just move on. So as counties, because that map also represents counties that limited public access. So if you look at the counties, they represent more of not just mass, but access to their facilities go along with those ordinances. So I think we're doing a good job, and I think that moving forward, the plan that I have heard, having a A-B team type red and blue makes sense. That's what we're doing in my state agency. We're back on full, but we do have precautions that if someone has COVID or in that pod area catches it, we have procedures in place for cleaning, close contact. So we're doing our part to stay safe, and we're doing our part to keep areas clean. Just as Steve does here with fogging operations, we do the same thing in the larger state agencies. We have someone come through every night and fog offices. So I think we're in the right direction, and there's really no other added protections right now at this moment, sir. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just a sidebar, the very dashboard that Councilman Griffin is using could be used
Right.
for
Yes,
annexation,
that's right.
just so everybody understands.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you literally hover over a lot in Blythewood, and it will show us the chain we need to take to get to a crick and tree.
Yes.
But that's exactly what Mr. Griffin was talking about when he said
Yes.
a dashboard would assist in annexation. It's a great tool.
And when me and Mr. Williamson sat down, we talked about some other ArcGIS pieces that go into it. I understand it from a professional standpoint, but I don't build GIS products. I rely on my GIS team to do those products. I know just enough to cause some corruption in the system. But I understand what goes into it. And when you look at it, what they call them, data centers. So when you see like the counties with Mass Ordinance 9, that's a data center that is just pushing data to that column. In the center is everything is different. So you have all these different centers sending information. And at that bottom line, you see here, it says last update 4 minutes ago. So there's a sequence in the data that every 4 or 5 minutes it updates. So, and that's what you want when you're building a dashboard. You have a time loop in the data, and it'll show, but it's essentially like that. If you were to zoom in at Blythewood, you know, you'll see all these different plots on there. You heard me talk about it, show up red if you sent your information in, so we know we can track it. So, and we can be as fancy or as however we want with the dashboard, but essentially this becomes a public tool because the public will also have access to see what we're doing to hold us accountable. That's a transparency piece of information sharing. And you know what that tool may do? If someone did not choose to submit their information for annexation and they just have a nosy day, what I call it, and they happen to see this link on YouTube, or not YouTube, but Facebook, and they click it and they say, oh, how come my house ain't red? You know, so that could be a motivational tool to make someone wants to be inclusive.
That's right. Thank you. Very good, informative background. Any discussion, council members?
Mr. Mayor,
About the mask ordinance. Go ahead,
yes,
sir.
absolutely. I think this is a good idea. The vaccines are rolling out a little bit slower than I believe people anticipated, and I believe another 61-day extension would not be a bad thing for our town. We do live in a reasonably heavily populated area. A lot of counties and municipalities that are heavily populated continue to adhere to a mask ordinance, and I think it would be a wise move for us to extend it to, I believe, early April, when it would expire unless renewed. So I would make a motion to approve ordinance 2021.001.
Second.
It's been probably motioned and seconded to approve ordinance number 2021.001, the mask ordinance. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, before, I didn't put it on here, but that's okay. Open citizen comments before we adjourn as a council and turn it over to the planning commission. Do we see any online? Anybody got any text or indication from any council member? Yes, sir, please, Steve. Great question.
I'll send you an annexation card.
Yes.
Please fill out this questionnaire when you receive it. And, no, those are good questions. Come to the meetings, the public meetings we have, and we'll address individuals who'd like to volunteer. They can assist us in the town comprehensive plan rewrite. They could assist us when we have activities in the park to participate, bring their families, and come out and enjoy it. Any council member would like to respond? Yeah, and just unfortunately, like I said before, if the individual lives outside the town limits, they can't serve on one of our boards or commissions. But if we look at annexation in the future, that individual will absolutely be able to do so.
You know, I think it will be a great idea to use folks as this person, to kind of be on like a team. If we get to that door knocking phase, of needing responses, I think folks, I don't think it would matter if you lived in the town limit or not at that point. You're just a volunteer to help us collect that information.
Good point. Any other comments? And Larry, I made one more note while we were talking. Another benefit of being in the town is the lowest zoning we have is 20,000 square foot lots. We used to have 5,000 as a choice, and we voted that out because we want the growth to be as controlled as possible, so.
I don't think that's correct, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe we actually removed them from the ordinance. I think we just rezoned
We rezoned,
parcels.
yeah, you're
Yes.
correct. Thank you. Correction. We rezoned everything that was R5 to R20.
Correct.
You're correct. That's right. So that helps. So when you have a large farm field beside your home, and if a developer buys it, they can't put 4 houses per acre. They can only put, 2 or whatever the math works out to be. It helps. Every little bit helps. Okay, gentlemen, we're looking to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been probably motion and seconded to adjourn tonight's town council meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned. We'll turn it over to the planning commission.
And with that, we will call to order, this will be a quick meeting or we would take a break, but we'll call to order the regular planning commission meeting for February 1st, 2021. We will forego the pledge since we did it as a group at the beginning of the joint meeting. So I'm going to insert another welcome here to Ms. Pickle. We're glad you're with us. Kind of take the planning commission back to a full slate, so we appreciate your willingness to serve. And I do want to point out also that Ms. Ernestine Middleton is probably joining us by Facebook, which she does regularly for our meetings since they've been brought back to the manor. So give her a shout out and thank her for joining us. Hope she's doing well. And with that, can we approve the minutes from December 7th of 2020, which were included in your packet? Have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Okay, motion and a second. All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The only action item we have this evening is the comprehensive plan survey, which was discussed at length with the joint meeting with council. My recommendation would be that we take it, continue to read it, but we would want to have any comments sent back to the planning commission by the second week of February so we can get those out for discussion and act on those at our regularly stated meeting in March. Does that make sense? Well, I think what we were going to, but I think what council mentioned and then some additions from Ms. Burnett would be good, some language changes. But it would be our intent to approve these at the March meeting. Because we could quickly get ourselves in a time crunch for the comp plan rewrite, but as important as that questionnaire is, I think we need to get it right. Yes. But we need to have a fairly open dialogue, which we could certainly do with staff's help, to drill down and be ready in March to approve these. Comments? Yeah, I'll probably put an email thread together, and if we can just do it on that same email thread. Yep. Whether it's a new question or revision to a question that's already there, just use the same email thread, and that way everybody's looking at the same information. I think that's appropriate.
Motion to table the action item for approval of the comprehensive plan survey until our next meeting at the beginning of
March. It's hard to believe. I have a motion and a second to table action item A till the March 2021 meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we're down to open citizens' comments, and we got there a whole lot faster than town council did.
How about that? I do have one question, comment, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Councilman Brock can help me remember. I know our county council member Derek Pugh has made an initiative to have COVID testing here in the manor, and I apologize, I don't have those dates handy. Do y'all remember? It's almost once a month for 3 months? Oh, wait, can you say that again, sir? Second Saturday of each month, February, March, and April.
Is that a
Okay.
drive-through test site? Oh, that's great.
It is drive-through testing available, free COVID tests here in the manor. This,
And free mask. Yeah.
also, free masks are available. Thank you all for that. But I just wanted to mention that tonight. We kind of passed it by, but,
Absolutely.
okay. Thank you, that's all I
Any
have.
other open citizens comment? Yes, sir. No, sir. Yeah. It will be, it'll be a multi-pronged, inside, outside. Yeah. Any other questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? In a second? Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Yes, I gave him that ordinance, I signed it.
Okay,
I know he's got to write the effective date.
okay.
Information right there. Want to introduce myself, Carol Williamson.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. Yes, sir. And, always harassing you with some administrator probably, but, this is the, breakdown of those.
Oh, God, I've got to do